Hello, my name is Jack Heritage, karate instructor.
And I am Pat Woodward, amateur enthusiast and practitioner of a number of different martial arts styles.
And welcome to the Armchair Combatives podcast.
Nice to have you, Jack. Nice to talk to you again. So today's topic, I think this is really going to be the crux of our entire show, because this topic today is mastery. Is it a better practice to devote yourself entirely to one specific school or style of martial arts, or are you going to become a more well-rounded martial artist by cross-training and experiencing as much as you can from the world of martial arts and combatives?
This is a really interesting conversation. I think we're actually two really good people to have for this, just based on the fact that, to start off with, like, obviously my background, I trained in karate I've been training in karate for 17 years. So I'd like to think by now I kind of know what it's about. And obviously yourself, you've told me that you've cross-trained a lot. So this should be quite an interesting contrast, because I think we might have some crossing points with this one. So I'll tell you what, Pat. What's your experience then from cross-training the martial arts and doing loads of different styles and different kind of disciplines? What do you think you've benefited from doing it that way?
So you're completely right. I have never really devoted myself to any one style for a long time. Certainly not 17 years worth of martial arts, which is already in itself a huge achievement. But I must say, so it started out Wing Chun in Leamington Spa. That was 8 months. Yeah. Then it was kind of moving into the Muay Thai and the Thai boxing and the Filipino martial arts from there. And then it was kind of, from there I saw lots of things, combat submission wrestling, which is kind of like a more simplified version of jiu-jitsu. I'm sure we're going to get people in the comments about that, but it's basically it's basically a lot more. There's a lot less starting on the knees or on the back. It's very much wrestling in the traditional American sense, in the sense of you start stood up, you start trying to pick the ankles, trying to get the takedowns, and then from there it's the fastest way to tire out or pin or submit your opponent, kind of thing. Okay. So that was really interesting, because first session of that I got absolutely tanked. Like, honestly, I've said it before, but like, honestly, if you're not used to it, an hour, a minute on the floor feels like an hour on your feet. Honestly.
Oh, 100%. I found.
But then it was kind of moving into sort of more esoteric styles like the Aikido and the Tai Chi, and I was quite lucky to have the Aikido and Tai Chi teacher that I did. Very knowledgeable guy, pretty much a direct descendant stylistically of Morihei Ueshiba, and I think he was. I mean, this is kind of something I do get into. I mean, this is very much a topic for a different day, but this kind of goes to show how young Aikido is as a martial art, because his teacher was taught by Ueshiba, which is kind of like, can you imagine meeting somebody today and it's like, oh yeah, I was actually taught by Mota Butoki, and it's like, hang on a minute, how old are you? You're looking good for 650, fella. But then it was, so it was kind of the Aikido and the Tai Chi, which does get a lot of flack online for good reasons and bad. I don't think it's all bad, but it was kind of, it was a very strange period of time practicing such vilified martial arts, I will say, because from my personal experience, Aikido works in the dojo, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. In the sense of, if you allow yourself to feel how the flow of the technique works, if you allow yourself to go there, if you go in with no ego. I know I sound like a right drippy hippie saying that, but it's really about understanding that, like, this isn't a fight. I'm not training for the octagon or anything like that. I am just trying to expand my awareness, my consciousness, my ki, whatever word you want to use, whatever word you want to take from all over the world. it's one of those things where, like, if you just accept that, like, I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna deliver the attack, and I'm gonna deliver it with intention and with honesty. And if the guy doesn't do what he's supposed to do, I'm gonna hit him in the head or the face or wherever it is you're aiming. And then you accept that, like, okay, the effect has landed. He's got me in his grip, in his circle. I'm gonna receive the technique. So one of the immediate things that I learned straight away, these fancy rolls that they do, yes, you learn them from a safety perspective so that you can take these big, high, powerful falls and then fall out with them. And not, there's a big thing of, with every martial art, you want somebody to come back next week. You're not going to
Yeah.
develop, you're not going to develop good students or a good business by running a class once a month, because all of your students need 3 weeks to prepare from the last time you all trained together, if they come back at
Yeah.
all. And the
So
reason that you roll out of them is because, a, if you are ever thrown, you can do something, try and get back on your feet. I know there's a lot of self-protection drills we've done that are very much, rather than invite the guy down to the floor for the old BJJ struggle cuddle, get up off your feet, because you never know what's going to happen.
yeah, for sure. So here's an interesting question for you then, Pat. So, you said you've trained Aikido, you try and like, train these other martial arts and stuff. Because you've done it in that more, I'm just going to call it like a broken way, in terms of like collecting fragments of martial arts here, fragments of martial arts there. Do you think that there's a really good synergy between them, or do you feel like they feel completely like opposite things, and they should never cross?
I feel I would always put it down to, like, learning a new martial art is like learning a language.
Okay.
I've bored you with this metaphor before, but the way I would look at it is, you know, people in Thailand speak Thai, people in Japan speak Japanese. Now, I'm not saying, they still have words to quantify the same things. They still have words for up and down and sky and road and, all of that. And I
Yeah.
think it's just very much, some martial arts have more synergy with others. Karate has a really nice synergy with something like Wing Chun or Thai boxing, because, karate is, yes, it's kind of got those longer ranges and it focuses on moving in, and you kind of then couple that with something like Wing Chun that involves holding your ground and keeping static and defending the point that you're standing and keeping that kind of close range in, like, they work well together. It's one of those, I haven't done anything kind of reminiscent of Taekwondo, but I do see people saying, like, if you learn Muay Thai and Taekwondo, you actually learn two martial arts that are kind of on paper as different as chalk and cheese, but together they make you a really well-rounded martial artist, because Taekwondo, you get the speed, you get the springiness, you get those long, powerful kicks, and then you kind of combine that with Thai boxing, and it's like, now these kicks aren't just fast, but they're powerful. And if somebody
Yeah.
does get past them in a sparring sense or in a self-protection sense, you've got the strikes, you've got the knees, you've got the elbows, you can clinch, and it's kind of, these two arts really complement each other. You learn Spanish, it's easy to learn French. You learn Greek, it's easy
Yeah,
to
of
learn
course.
Italian. That it kind of works from that. It kind of works from that sense. So I would never say there's such a thing as two martial arts that don't go together, because my viewpoint is, you can learn a martial art for just about any range and just about any situation in the modern age, which I think is a great thing, because obviously, even as little as 100 years ago, it was a case of, what's in my area? Boxing. Okay, well, I guess I'm learning how to box. What's in my area? Oh, Muay Thai. Well, I guess I'm learning Muay Thai, because otherwise you had to travel. You wanted to learn karate 100 years ago from the UK. You had to be willing to get on a train and a steamboat and take the 2 week trip to Japan and hope somebody there, takes you in.
Yeah.
And I think something that is being seen a lot more is people coming across these new styles, and you have something for every occasion. And it's one of those where I don't need the next martial art I practice to teach me how to do a straight punch. I've done that
Yeah.
before. I know how to straight punch. I'm not. Do you know what I mean? Like, if I go to the BJJ gym and they go, "Oh, cool. So this lesson's all about jab cross." I'm a bit like, brother, I did jab cross in karate. If I wanted to do that, I'd have stayed where I was. I'm come to you because I want to learn how to roll around on the floor. I would almost weirdly flip the question and say it's not about necessarily these martial arts synergizing in themselves, because they should all be serving their own separate function. They should all be developing a range or a skill or or a range of techniques that you don't have. You've been doing boxing your whole life. Well, lean into kickboxing, because you'll feel in your comfort zone, and then they'll teach you how to kick. You really like kickboxing, go to Muay Thai, because now they'll teach you how to throw the elbows and the knees. They'll kind of teach you to clinch up, which you haven't learned before. You like the clinching? Okay, now you can move into jiu-jitsu, because now you're actually going to the floor. You didn't like jiu-jitsu? Maybe you don't like actually being on the floor? Try judo. It's one of those things where every single culture on the planet figured out how to punch somebody, right? And
exactly.
at some point in time, somebody within that culture went, we should write down how we do this, because whatever we're doing is working, because we're winning, we're coming out on top. And so it developed into karate to deal with. The quote better than I do about dealing with vagabonds and ruffians, and
Villains and ruffians. Yeah,
villains are,
appreciate
that's the one. Yeah, so the villain, dealing with villains and ruffians, and Muay Thai was so revered because it was the martial art taught to the men on the battlefield that guarded the king himself from atop his elephant. If they ever lost their weapons, they would have a martial art at their fingertips so devastating that nobody dared come near them. At least that's the mythos. I would very much firmly sit on the sense of it's not necessarily about synergy as it is as much putting new tools in the toolkit.
Okay, I really like that. That's cool.
So to kind of shift the spotlight, obviously you have obviously just said that you've been practicing karate for 17 years, which again is an incredible achievement even itself. That level of dedication is, should be lauded. And
Oh,
I
thank you.
think, no, honestly, man, I can definitely say this with honesty when I say I can't imagine doing a single martial art for 17 years, but what can I say? I get bored. So, what then did prompt you to start experiencing different clubs and styles and their ways of doing things? Was it a case of you looked at your karate and went, I can bolster this? Or was it more a case of you went, there's something missing?
So I think that's a really, really interesting thing to say, because it's all about context for me. It's like contextually, why am I doing the martial art that I'm doing, and what am I trying to gain from it? And you kind of touched on this a minute ago. Like, if you want to get good at throwing, you go to a judo guy. You want to get good at ground fighting, you go to the BJJ guys. We know this as martial artists, that there's different groups or different styles that are better for different things. Now, obviously, when you grow up in a club, it's a totally different experience for me, because you kind of get, I'm not going to use the word pushed always, but you kind of get encouraged into it by your parents, saying, hey, you should do this, you should try this out. And when you're 7, you don't really have any expectations. You go in and you're like, I know when I watch ninjas on TV, they look really cool. They kick things, they jump around, and they punch people. I want to know how to do that. That's really cool. And you start learning stuff, and you're like, hey, my skills are getting better. Look at what I can do. But it all depends on, you get to a certain age. Like, I get why I'm doing this. I understand that I'm learning how to kick, I'm learning how to punch, I'm learning how to do kata, or whatever it might be. But then you sometimes go like, okay, but for what end? And that was kind of what I found in the club that I was in. It was getting to a stage where I was a teenager, and I was kind of going, I know all this stuff. I know that I'm relatively good at all of this stuff, but like, what else? We didn't compete in our club. It was very like fitness based, and it was one of those things where I was like, I love all the things that I'm doing. I just want a bit more. And I knew I wasn't going to get that with my club. I wasn't going to be able to say, hey, by the way, do you mind just like changing the entire thing you do just to suit me, please? Because obviously that's not fair. So what I did, I carried on with karate, but then I took up kickboxing. With the goal of, hey, look, I want to do more sparring. I want to just be a little bit more proactive with some of the, the kicking and punching drills that I know. I want to be able to use those in like a little bit more regular sparring sessions. So anyway, I took up kickboxing instead, and I did that. Well, not instead, but I did it as well as, and I did that for a couple of years, and I found that having that base of really having a good idea of how to kick, how to move, how to strike, it made learning kickboxing easier because it was kind of like, hey, you already know how to chamber for a kick. So all we're doing, we're just changing the angle slightly. Or, okay, you know how to do a spinning hook kick. We do it slightly differently. We do it as a spinning kick and we keep the leg straight. Okay. And little things like that made it easier to then cross train out of it. So for me, my experience is that if you kind of have like a base style, especially one that you've spent a significant amount of time on, because, you know, I would have been 7 or 8 years into my karate before I kind of even thought about doing anything else. It really helped me then bring it back to that main style. And you know this better than anybody, Pat. But like, if we look at the way that I teach today and the way that I kind of approach martial arts, I very much go, hey, I really like the thing that those people are doing. I'm going to take that, and that's going to be karate. And that, Christian Vedavort talks about that a lot. Is that he basically just steals things and calls it karate, and I love that because it makes sense to me that you don't need to necessarily put labels on the things that you're doing, provided you understand the context of which you're wanting to do them. Like, if a Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy has a better way of getting up from the floor in self-protection than you, take it and use it. Don't get like stuck to, hey, well, my style's the one I grew up in. I'm gonna like live and die on that hill, and I can't bring anything else in because God forbid I offend the old masters. Then you kind of end up like filtering your art down a little bit. And I think that's why I kind of like the way that you've done it in a sense with that cross training element. It really enhances all the things that you already know, or it gives you another perspective of how to improve other skills. I was never good at Brazilian jiu-jitsu or ground fighting in general, submission grappling, whatever you want to call it, until I started training in it. And I've been doing submission grappling now for on and off for about 2 years, along with some like a little bit of Greco-Roman wrestling, a little bit of freestyle wrestling. And when I actually look at how that applies to the karate that I do, biggest thing that it does is it recontextualizes some of the things I already see in karate, especially kata. For any karateka listeners that we might have, you'll know this, that kata is often interpreted in loads of different ways. There's no right or wrong. Does it work or doesn't it? And doing other styles, especially grappling styles, it makes you kind of realize, hey, look, well, that movement could be this, and it makes a lot of sense for it to be that. So I think it's really important to experience other things, but for me, having that base style to keep coming back to, it just felt like I was building on top of it, opposed to taking separate elements and then kind of having like this. The best way to describe it is like, if I had like a roast dinner, right? I've got my chicken, I've got some broccoli on the plate, I've got gravy, I've got all of that stuff. So I'm building up that roast dinner instead of going, right, I've got broccoli on this plate, I've got beef on this plate, I've got Yorkshire puddings on this plate. It's all kind of sitting on the same plate, and it's, especially when you take a big bite together, it tastes pretty damn good. If you see what I'm trying to say. That's probably a really bad analogy.
No, I'll be honest, I was just gonna make the same analogy kind of like with a cake. Because it's in the sense of, because you can make a so for the listeners at home, my day job is I am a pastry chef. And I know for a fact that you can make a very serviceable cake with some flour, some eggs, some sugar, and some butter. And if you've got that in your house, you can make a cake. Don't get me wrong, you're not going to win any awards with it, but it's going to be a nice, homely, comforting cake. And this is the thing. When was the last time you just had a plain Victoria sponge? Or when was the last time you just made a plain Victoria sponge? I would always argue, like, I know it's kind of, it seems a bit backwards comparing, being fit and doing a martial art for the mastery of mind and body with sitting around and eating cake. But it's kind of, if you're going to bake a cake, it's an occasion. Maybe you can put chocolate in it. You can put anything, different flavors of jam. You could put you can go absolutely mad. And there's no one cake that everybody in the world says this is the best cake, right?
No, it's subjective, right?
And I'm not being funny. I mean, for the listeners at home, maybe just prove a point to yourself and prove a point to us. Go on your Facebook page or your Instagram or wherever it is and stand firm on, like, this is my favorite cake. This is the best type of cake that ever existed. And everybody else that likes a different kind of cake other than this one is wrong. And see how immediately you are flamed out of existence. And this is the thing that, like, does weirdly don't get me like it drags me down a little bit, because I do meet people like yourself who have been doing, one style for a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, and you see the mastery that they exert over themselves in a physical sense, and I'm like, damn, that is seriously impressive stuff. But at the same time, you take the same joke I've just made. People stand on karate. What a Ryu
Yeah,
karate
yeah,
is the best style of martial arts that has ever existed, and then somebody will pop up like, no, Muay Thai is the best style that's ever existed. And then somebody pop up and be like, no, this is the best style. And like, there's no one in that conversation, or at least I'm speaking perhaps slightly pejoratively, but this is from my experience of seeing things online. There's nobody in that conversation going, guys, do you not see how silly this is? Do you not
yeah.
see how? Do you not see how silly? Because it would be the exact same conversation if you take it back to the joke about the cake, going online and just making a firm stance of carrot cake is the best cake to ever be made. Like, it would be the same thing. Like, there'd be people in that comment section going, "Can we not just agree that we all like cake?"
It's like at the end of, yeah, I totally see what you're saying though, because everybody in those comment sections, they're really passionate martial artists, and that's why they're
Yeah.
commenting. But what they're not understanding is that by arguing about it, they're not actually like they're actually making it harder to be a martial artist, because you end up with these cult-like clubs, and I'm sure you've seen them. I certainly have.
Oh yeah.
Where
Oh
we are
yeah.
the best, everybody else is wrong. So if we do it this way, you've got to do it this way because it's the only way of doing it. And it's like, right, okay. The only time, in my opinion, that is important is if it's an objective thing. So as an example, if we were talking about self-protection in terms of whatever it might be. So let's just say we're talking about what's the best way to keep yourself safe in X situation, whatever it might be. Okay, there is likely going to be a right answer and a wrong answer, because there's a lot of things at play there that make it important for that. So let's just say it's how to keep people at distance. Okay, so you need to either use something in your hand, or you need to use your arms to keep people at distance. Okay, or just avoid the situation in overall. You can't really do in different interpretations of that. There's only kind of like to keep distance, you need to put something in the way of somebody, right? But then you end up with like, is this the best way to do this kick? No. We do it like this. We turn the hips slightly more, or we turn the toes facing upwards or downwards, or whatever it might be. So it's so much more productive if we just go, hey, you do it like this, right? We do it like this. We do it for this reason. And they're like, okay, oh cool, we do it for this reason. And then you just go, have like these kind of healthy conversations where you go, I really like that. That's interesting. It's not how I do it. Why don't you try the way that I do it and see if you find it better or the same, or or maybe yours is better. Then you kind of end up with these healthy sharing, opposed to just opposing views that just keep fighting and fighting and fighting. And there was an even better one. So you mentioned about the analogy of the cake. I saw this other thing on I think it was on Facebook, and it was literally somebody put up a picture of a glass of water, right? A photo of a glass of water, and they said, this is a cup of water, okay? And then they said, people will argue about that, do it. And basically the comment section, everybody goes, no, it's not a cup, it's a glass. And then basically people were like fucking arguing the semantics of what a cup is, what a glass is. Actually, it's not a full glass of water, therefore we can't call it a glass because it's not full. And it's like, you're like, why are you arguing about water? It's just ridiculous.
No, and I completely agree. And don't get me wrong, there are some guys out there who have just the beautiful satire of these exact scenarios that happen in the martial arts community. And I think it gets to me. Not in a, don't get me wrong, it doesn't keep me up at night, but
No. Yeah,
it is that thing of like, don't get me wrong, when like, you take it back to like a more structured martial arts argument. So when we are sparring, it makes a lot more sense for somebody like me who is over 6 foot, and I've got strong legs because I'm nearly 100 kilos, so I've got to have fucking strong legs. It makes sense for me to keep somebody who's 5'8" at range with kicks, because if they get in, it's going to be I'm going to have to spend energy just crunching up, just to stop body shots and stuff. When we're grappling, if I'm grappling with if I'm grappling with people who are below 5'9", I'm spending just as much energy keeping my legs at like almost a 45-degree angle to stay down to their level to keep in that clinch, because I have to get all the way down there with them. And grappling on the feet is so much harder for me because my center of gravity is naturally higher than a lot of other people's. That doesn't give me the right or the grounds to then go, well, grappling is useless. Grappling doesn't work for me in the slightest, therefore it's useless. I have to accept that if I end up in a grappling situation, unless it's with somebody my height or taller, obviously slightly, my height being a, round, doesn't have to be exact figure, you know what I'm saying. But it's one of those where if I end up in a sparring match or a self protection situation with a short person, there is an element of like, they're short, just kick them, because if you can just keep kicking them, they're going to get the message that like, I'm not going to get through to this guy, and that will change the scenario in some way, shape, or form. I don't want to go around making promises, being like, oh, if you get mugged by a short guy, just keep kicking him until he goes away, because he might not go away, but he might get to the point where you have enough breathing room to just dip out of there and escape. It was one of those where I saw a great video by Nat Hearn. He does these really kind of nice, clean, clinical shorts and stuff on Instagram and YouTube.
He's good.
Yeah, and he was doing this great one where it's just like, are you in a self protection scenario? Is it very close range? Use your elbows, use your knees. Are you in medium range? Strike. That's where the strikes come in. That's where the knees come in. Are you at long range? That's where the kicks come in. If you're a karateka, that's where your long strikes come in. Getting in from that long range to striking distance is something that karatekas do really well. Are you at very long range? Just run away. Don't worry about making a technique work from here. Just go. And he's somebody who I don't know his exact background, but he strikes me as somebody who has very much kind of the best of both worlds between us, in the sense of he seems to have a very strong grounding in something like karate, and he has experienced a lot of other martial arts on the side.
It seems that way. I've never fact checked that, but I know he's definitely comes from a sport karate background. I think he looks Shotokan, but that might be an over.
He's got that Shotokan aura about him.
He's got that Shotokan stance to him.
For if for some reason this does take off and you are listening to this episode now, we don't mean anything by this. Please don't come after us. You will naturally have a much bigger following than we do. So we can't take the level of abuse you'll be able to bring our way. We mean this only with love. That's our little disclaimer for the episode. But yes, so kind of returning to the matter at hand.
Okay.
With the sheer variety of styles you can find on the street, and I don't mean that in the sense of going out and fighting people, but it's kind of like a Google search is a beautiful thing for somebody who wants to learn martial arts, because you will be made quickly aware of how many different martial arts are actually within driving distance.
Oh my god, so many.
Because me and Jack live right out in the middle of the boonies in terms of where we live in the English countryside. But a quick Google search will show that around my area, there's karate, there's kickboxing, there's grappling, there's Thai boxing, there's all sorts of stuff. If I go further afield, if we get out into the larger cities, Birmingham, Coventry, London, which aren't really that far away if you're prepared to make the journey, if you're prepared to go and train, if you're prepared to dedicate yourself to something like this, hundreds of different martial arts suddenly make themselves available. So it's one of those things where, do you think there is a set amount of time that you need to dedicate yourself to a specific martial art or martial style or combatives class or anything like that?
Yep.
Just to improve the Krav guys, because I know they don't. I know they don't like the word martial art. But it's just So do you think there's a certain level of like you have to get to black belt or the equivalent of black belt in a system before it's appropriate for you to start branching off? And I do want to say I haven't done this, so if you do say yes, I'm not going to be offended. But it's more I just what is tread lightly, yeah. I'll be seeing you on Monday. No, so it's more just like, what would your 2 cents be on the matter?
Okay, so this is a really interesting thing. So obviously, title of the episode, we're looking into mastery, right? And I think a really important thing before we kind of answer that is what is mastery? For me, I think there's kind of two ways you can look at it. I think there's number one, which I think especially is a very Japanese view, is you can never master a martial art. There's no such thing. You can keep training it. You can get really, really good at it. But even a 10th Dan has stuff to learn. The first thing I could say is like, okay, well, there's never a good time then. There's never a good time to split off and try something new. Okay, or we could look at it and go, well, what if you've just got a really good understanding of the fundamentals? For me, I would say, from my experience, a good time to branch off into doing something else is when you actually understand what the style that you're doing is trying to teach you. What are the underlying principles of the martial art? So, as an example, let's just say it's a grappling martial art. Let's just say they teach you, okay, you've got to break posture in order to throw people. You've got to look at controlling the head and controlling the limbs. You have to understand that your posture shouldn't be broken. So how do I defend those things? And how do I manipulate limbs to make sure I'm always in a strong position? So that's a few ideas. There's other things in there too. I know there's probably wrestlers sat there going, "What are you on about? It's not everything." But that's as an example, that's a few important things. Do I need to know all of those things and be able to do them extremely well before I try and do some striking? Probably not, because as long as I'm still learning. The only thing I would say though is that I wouldn't start a style. As an example, let's take karate because that's my experience. I wouldn't say, right, I've learned one kata, as in I've just learned how to do the kata, no application, no bunkai, none of that. I just know how to do the kata, and I've learned how to do a snap punch, reverse punch, or jab cross, whatever you call it, and I've learned how to do a front kick. That's all I need to know. That's all karate has to offer. And then you just go, right, boxing now. And then they teach you hook, punch, uppercut. And you're like, lovely, right, I know that now. Let's go and learn how to do side control and scarf hold from the BJJ guys. Yeah, that's all I need to know. I think that's when it becomes a little bit dangerous, because then you're collecting a bag of tricks of loads of little things. Hey, look, I know how to do this from this style, this from this style, this from this style. But there's you haven't got a purpose, you haven't got a goal for doing those things. Whereas I think, the way that I did it, and I'm sure you've done this too, it's like, okay, I'm learning this to then improve this skill with what my end goal is. And I know people that have trained like ridiculous amounts of martial arts, but they have no connectivity between each other, and they don't use any of the old things they've learned. All they do is like, yeah, I did taekwondo for a week, did Muay Thai for a month, did this, did that, and you're like, kind of like, well, what have you actually taken away from doing those things, and how has that made you a better martial artist overall? So if I look at my own experience, then I know that I really enjoy hitting people. I really enjoy kicking them. And then from there, I was like, okay, well, what else can I do that I can add on to those things? I was like, okay, well, if you clinch them first, or you grapple with them, then you can hit them from grappling positions. Which at the time I didn't really know that's what that was. And obviously, we look at the application of karate, and we actually look at actually loads of grappling in there. And then I was like, okay, well, what am I missing at the moment then? Well, I'm shit on the floor. So as soon as I fall on the floor, I don't know what to do. Okay, great. Well, let's do some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu then, or let's do some submission grappling, whatever it might be. Okay, great. That's made me a little bit better at that. So I think it's all about what is your goal set and what are you trying to get out of your martial art. And I think your mastery side of it, it's like, for me, it's like I feel like I am getting better and better and better at karate because I'm doing all of these other disciplines that feed back into it. So, question for you then, Pat, is, coming from that kind of split of doing, 8 months or years or a couple of years of something, like taking the skills from that and putting it together, would you say that you would like that base style to then bring all that stuff back to, or do you think that it's more beneficial the way that you've done it?
Oh, I think it's a very personal perspective.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think personally, for me, you've completely hit the nail on the head with what you said about understanding the fundamentals. So it's like,
Yeah.
8 months of Wing Chun. It was like, okay, so you have these fundamentals of this martial art involve kind of the protection of the body and not yielding from too much space, keeping that nice tight stance that is also it's a very it's almost a condensed version of the cat stance in karate. You've got you know, your weight is on your back leg, you're so that you can kick with the front leg and still maintain balance. You can't be easily moved. Maintaining, the kind of what they call the wedge. So it's kind of you put your arms out in front of you as far as they'll go and put your fingertips together. That space is the wedge. That realistically is the only space you need to defend. Because if an attack is anywhere else, it's not going to hit you.
Sure.
And it was very much the way that they fight, the sticky hands, the strikes that they use, protecting that center line. For me, I felt like I understood those fundamentals within, like I said, a period of around 8 months. Now, I know for a fact I'm going to get a load of Wing Chun people being like, but you have failed to master the intricacies. And I definitely just made some old Chinese people cry by saying that I understood Wing Chun within 8 months. But it's also, but it's one of those things where, like, for me, from the perspective of, as you said, the context of I'm doing this because I want to feel a bit more confident. I want to feel a bit more active. I want to feel a bit fitter. I want to feel like I can defend myself if the need arises. And I got that out of Wing Chun in 8 months. And then I decided, you know what? And it wasn't a case of, as you said, I'm like, right, that's it. 8 months on the calendar. Mark it. Wing Chun complete. That wasn't at all.
Yeah.
That wasn't at all. I was kind of looking at it going like, okay, but there's a bit more I feel I want to be doing. I'm not quite gelling with it as much as I used to. That's as much a personal thing as it is a practical thing. You
Yeah.
might,
Yeah.
people leave the club. You don't, you stop seeing some of your old friends. Maybe things, you have a new instructor and you don't like them as much, which isn't to say that they can't do exactly, not to say they're not as good. Doesn't mean to say they don't know as much, but it's more a teacher of a martial art is just as important as the martial art itself because that's the transmission method. I think I could definitely say I don't have anything that constitutes my base style. Do you know what? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I get exactly what you mean. Yeah.
Like I figured, you know what I mean? Like, it very much started out as a hobby, and it's become something that has developed into a full blown, fiery passion for martial arts.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where when we are sparring, something that I really enjoy doing is looking at the way somebody is fighting and think, how am I going to get around this? Within the rule set, within because obviously in all training, in all sparring, there is a rule set, whether you want to admit it or not. Within this rule set, how do I get around this person? How do
Yeah.
I, you know, do they like to strike? I should kick. Do they like to kick? I could sweep. Do they like to grapple? I can clinch. You move around, and it's one of those where you develop kind of basic things. I would say that in 11, 12 years of doing martial arts now, I have I have trademarks, I guess you could call it.
Okay.
Like, I like using the teep kick to keep people at bay in sparring. I like the back fist because of how fast it is. Um, I know that I annoy you with the way that I pressure people's guard, but
I
it's
don't know
one
what
of
you
the,
mean.
I don't
I
know
don't know
what
what
no,
you're talking about.
I don't know. He doesn't know. He doesn't know. He doesn't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
Um, but it's one of those things where like those things came from no one place in particular. The teep comes from Muay Thai, but it was very much how that kick is utilized might not be exactly how to do it. Maybe I use it more as a stop than as a push. Maybe I don't use it as the way that the Muay Thai people would intend it to be used. I like the back fist, but is it a case of am I using it? Am I using it as a damage or am I using it as a rangefinder? Do I use it to think? He thinks I'm back. He thinks I'm going for the back fist, so he's going to block the one side of his head, but actually it's a snap punch, and it's one of those where I would say that doing as many martial arts as you can, well, maybe not many martial arts as you can. A big point I want to put on this is as many martial arts as you want to, which I know sounds the same, But it's like you said, if you're doing as many martial arts as you can, then you fall into the trap of I did a week of this and I didn't, and then I
Yeah.
moved on to
You become
something else.
collecting it. You're
I did
collecting
a,
martial
I did a month of this, and then it kind of got bored. I've met those people. I met those people recently. We met somebody that came to the club recently, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm doing a bit of this. I'm doing a bit of Wing Chun. I'm doing a bit of this." And it's like he turned up for 2 sessions, and then that was it. And it's kind of, did he not like it, or did he think like, there we go, karate in the bag? You never
Yeah,
know.
yeah. It's hard to tell,
And
isn't it?
it's hard to tell. And it's like, at the same time, I'm not saying that that's the wrong thing to do, because that would be wildly hypocritical of me to do, to say to somebody, you can do as many martial arts as you want, because I've done as many martial arts as I want. But I think it's always been with a very clear goal in mind. Do I want to learn? Do I want to learn the weapon work? Do I want to get stronger kicks? Do I want to learn how to grapple? Do I want to learn how to go to the floor? Do I want to learn a good striking system? Do I want to learn a good locking system? I'm not going to lie. Sometimes it's just been, do I want to get something in the toolbox that's going to help me beat this particular guy in sparring? Like,
Yeah.
that's, and then, because that's as much a part of it as anything, and it's kind of, you set your own goals. It's really something special to meet somebody who is like, my goal is to master this one specific thing, because we've all seen those kind of self-aggrandizing posts of like, the black belt is one in 100,000 people.
Oh yeah.
within
Oh, yeah.
within you know within if 10,000 people start at a martial arts gym, then within a month, 1,000 of them will have left. Within a year, 2,000 of them will have
Yeah.
left, and it just goes on and on and on. And it's like, as soon as somebody gets their black belt, that another 1,000 will leave the dojo, and then the only one left is the true warrior. And it's like,
So,
okay,
yeah.
I guess. I don't think that's necessarily untrue, but you don't have to be such a dick about it.
So
Like,
let me add on to that then, Pat. Just because that, sorry, seeing as you're bringing up black belts and stuff, and I think this is actually a really interesting point, and I hope some of the listeners will like this. But it's like, just because you're a black belt doesn't mean you've mastered anything, in
oh
my
yeah,
opinion. From my experience, especially, and this isn't me just throwing people under the bus, as in the styles under the bus, but karate is notorious for that. Taekwondo is notorious for that. Like, you get black belts that come in all shapes and sizes, from all ages and all ranges, whatever that might be. Okay, so, and there's no industry standard for what a black belt is, right? In those martial arts, especially. So it's one of those
totally.
things where we often have this misconception that mastery is, okay, I've got my black belt, I know everything. Clap my hands. See you later, guys. Lovely to train with you for the last 5 years, 6 years, whatever it might be in your style. And it's like, okay, the way that I've kind of began to look at it is, when you get to black belt, you should hopefully begin to realize how little you actually fucking know.
Oh, 100%.
For me, it was, I think, I can't remember exactly who said it, but somebody said, yeah, black belt is when you know the fundamentals, you know what you're doing, and now you actually start getting good. And I thought that was really interesting, because I think the public's conception of what martial artists do, especially the conception of what a black belt is massively misunderstood. I've met a range of black belts that range from very, very good. I've also met black belts that I would look at and go, in the nicest way possible, if you were at my school, you wouldn't be wearing that.
No,
And
no,
yeah,
completely. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm always wary of like, oh, you're a black belt. How long did that take you? Ah, well, I went on this intensive training course, and at the end of the week, they gave me a black belt, and I was like, the end of the week, the end of the week,
yeah.
like, well, this is the thing, but I had a week of uninterrupted training with the master, and I'm like, okay, I still punch better than you. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, I'm not being funny, Jack.
yeah.
You are fourth dan now?
Yes.
Fourth dan.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
but this is the thing.
Yeah.
If I called you up and I said, Jacko, I've got $1,000 in my pocket and a week off work. I want that black belt. You'd turn around and don't get me wrong. I know you. You'd pause, but you turn around to me and you go, brother, that's not how it works. I can't take you from orange to black in a week. Like,
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's like I can't fathom this kind of mentality of like, yes, a week of intensive training and I'll be there. You're not. It's not a pilot's license. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Exactly.
like, this is the thing. A pilot's license, if you take that as the metaphor, a pilot's license is just a piece of paper that proves you can get the plane on and off the floor without dying. Like, that doesn't. Giving a pilot's license doesn't make you Top Gun Maverick.
No.
Like, no, and I think it's one of those where, like, you take this intensive course, you get a black belt, and people are like, "That's it, master. Time to open my own series of schools." It's like, brother, you've been doing this a week. Fair enough.
So
You now know all of the fundamentals, but so many people just don't get it.
they don't understand it, and I think one of the big ones for me at least is the kind of like thought process of black belt is what I'm aiming for, and I think you're going about it the wrong way if you look at that as your end goal. And I've seen it so much. And I think it actually sometimes gets encouraged by the school that you're at. It's like, you've got to get your black belt. You've got to get your black belt. Come on, you've got to keep working for that black belt. And it's like, as soon as you get there, though, especially for kids that like might have been pushed into it a little bit, they might have been slightly more encouraged to do it from their parents, opposed to the fact that they actually love it. As soon as they get to black belt, what's the first thing they do? They fuck off. Because they're done. They're like, right, I've had enough. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to have to like stand up and do 1,000 Junzukis until I go home. Like, I just I want the bout. I want the qualification. I did air quotations there for you listeners.
For the listeners at
I want the
home,
qualification, right? And then you're like, right, I've done karate. Bosh, done. Great. And it's, for me, it's just lack of understanding as to why people do that. It's not wrong. I would love a black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I'd love one. That'd be really cool. However, I just don't have the time to put the effort in at the moment in order to do that. But nevertheless, I'd like one. But I don't want the black belt because of the status that it brings. I want the black belt because I'd like all the skills that go along with that experience. And I think that's the big difference between how a lot of people look at martial arts and how martial artists that have been doing it a long time look at martial arts generally, is that you're not aiming for bouts, you're aiming for experiences and skills. And if if you go to a club for a long time and you're not getting those skills from that club, leave that club. If you're not getting good experiences from the first two weeks, for the first month, for the first year, then leave, do something else, and that's okay. You're allowed to do that. It doesn't mean you've quit. It just means you've gone, right, well, this doesn't fit what I'm actually trying to do. What is my goal? Well, okay, let's just say your goal is self-protection. You want to look after yourself, and you're doing 2 hours of kata a week. It's like, well, okay, great, kata's fun. It's not helping me with my self-protection. It's not teaching me how to like deal with like face-to-face combat, or that kind of escalation of violence. So I think you've always got to just keep bringing it back to contextualizing, what am I doing, why am I doing it, and for what reason do I want to get to said rank or whatever that might be. And that's why, for me, like, I haven't really showed much interest in doing bouts or gradings or anything like that in other styles, because it's like, I've got my black belt, I'm happy with it. When I got it, I was ecstatic. I was young. I was like, hey, this is amazing. I can't believe I've got my black belt. Oh god, But then, I started looking at teaching. I started looking at other things after that point, and I was like, okay, well, there's more to this. So if I want to do anything else, I don't need to necessarily get a qualification in it. As long as the skills that I'm learning from it, I'm finding useful and I'm bringing back. And that goes back to the point I was making earlier. I train other styles for specific reasons.
completely. Well, we are coming to. We've got the sort of last 5-10 minutes of the show, of the hour.
Yeah.
So it's big question time.
Oh damn.
Do you think that belts are necessary at all? If you put it into the context of you are trying to get better as a martial artist.
How long have we got? Sorry, 10 minutes.
Got about 5-10 minutes. This is what I mean. I'm going to put you on the spot, because my My 2 cents would be, and I know because
Right, yeah.
I've said this to you before, I don't necessarily go in for the belt culture,
No.
and that does come from the fact of I don't stick. It's one of those things where like people will probably flame me for this a little bit, and I'll meet you in the comment section. But there is an element of I do so many different styles of martial arts because I'm trying to become a better martial artist, not because I want to be a great karateka or a great Thai crew or a great Panantukan fighter or a great jiu-jitsu grappler or anything like that. I do because I enjoy the mastery it gives me over my mind and my body. And I love learning the ways that my body moves, and I love learning all the ways that somebody else's body doesn't move. And that is, it makes me tick. I could talk well. This very podcast is proof, Jack, that I could talk about this stuff all day and not run out of things to talk
Oh
about
yeah, absolutely.
because it is my great passion.
Likewise, it's exactly the same with me. Right, so I agree with absolutely everything. Right. However, I got to throw that in there.
However,
The only thing that I think a black belt is good for, or the belt system in general, is it separates the skills in which you're learning. Now, what I mean by that is that as human beings, we like to know that we've achieved things, and we like the sense of going, you know what, you've earned that. In my opinion, the belt system has got two purposes. Purpose number one is to give short-term goals to your students. Okay, so if I get like a guy coming to me saying, hey, look, I want to learn your complete system up to black belt. Let's just say, okay, let's pretend we don't have a belt system, right? But up to the level of what a black belt should be. Okay, based on our system, that would take approximately 7-ish years, provided they're training regularly and they are, they're actually putting in the effort. It could be shorter than that, or depending if they're naturally talented, it could be longer if they find certain elements harder to learn. Okay, if I just say to that person though, on the spot, right, okay, mate, lovely stuff. You can pay monthly. Come along and train with us. It's going to take you 7 years to get to the point that you want to get to. Just buy yourself a suit and we'll go from there. And there's no short-term goals in between. It becomes this thing where you look at the end goal and you're like, Jesus Christ, that's so far away. That's so far away from what I'm doing now. God, I can't even imagine me getting to that point because I haven't even mastered how to do a jab yet. So for me, I think, having the belt system, it gives you those short-term goals. It gives you those like, right, okay, so what do I need to do in order to get my first belt? So if I can master jab, cross, front kick, in our system, we're going to, let's say, groin kick, and then you need to know a kata, and you need to know a little bit of application, and that. So, okay, right, I can break that down then. So once I've done that, that's my first little section done. I'll make sure I know that stuff really, really well, and then I can start worrying about learning the next stuff. And then I think it actually makes it easier. And, we found this, and I'm sure you found this too, when I brought in the sheet system into the way in which I ran the club, of having... you have a tick sheet for everything. So you have like a Kion section for the people that aren't karate based. Kion is like our fundamental, so that's like our punching and kicking drills and stuff. Then we had a tick for your kata, so your form, alongside its applications. So that's applying those movements to a partner. And then we've got grappling in there. So you've got to have an understanding of different grappling principles. You've then got your sparring principles, which are kind of like separate to the grappling. So that's like your stand-up striking. And then we've also got self-protection stuff in there too. Once you get all of those bits ticked off, then I know that you're ready to then come and grade. For the kids, we add in the little stripe system too. So, each of those sections that I just listed have a different color that are kind of like affiliated with that. So once they've got all the Kion done, they get a little black stripe, etc., etc. And because there's all those like little short-term goals, when I brought that in, I noticed the kids were actually working harder to make those things happen, because they weren't just going, oh, well, grading's in 6 months. Oh, right, okay. I guess I'll just carry on doing a few roundhouse kicks, maybe put a little bit of effort in. I don't really care what I do on the bag. It doesn't make a difference to me. But if I said to them, okay, so what we need to see in order to know that you're ready for your next grading, I want to see some really strong front kicks. And the first thing the kids do, they're like, oh, shit, okay, right, yeah, okay, I'll show you a front kick, mate. I'll show you the best front kick I can get. Because guess what I get if I do it right? I get a tick on my sheet, and then I get a little stripe on my belt. And, is it necessary for the overall development of the kids or the development of the adults? No, because I can still teach them those things without giving them a stripe, giving them a belt. But it's all about the mindset going into it. Now, I got this kind of idea from a couple of different places. Now, I know other martial arts schools that use the stripe system and use the tick sheet system, but I actually learned about this earlier in my PT. For people that don't know, I'm a personal trainer outside of this too. Work in a gym, teach a lot of like classes, take one-on-one clients. And something you're taught about when you learn PT is a thing called SMART goals, and that stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. Now, all of those different elements there go into my bout system just as much as they go into the way that I run my PT. So the goal has to be specific. So you've got to know this, and this. Measurable, it has to be something that I know you can do it because, so this is a front kick. Your knee was up, you extended your leg, and you pushed the bag, whatever it might be, right? Achievable. Like, okay, so instead of me going, right, so for your first grading, you need to know 20 katas. Okay, bit too much for like a 5-year-old who's just started, right? Realistic, very similar to achievable. It's got to be, it's got to be something that is doable for the kid. It's got a realistic goal that isn't going to be too far stretching or going to take too long, because the last one is your time bound. So we're going to do that within 6 months. And that's generally what I'd say is like 6 months per grading for the system that we do. Now, applying those things into the martial arts actually really helped me, because it made me realize that kids work on that basis anyway. They work on that system in the school system. That's how you learn, right? Okay, once you know all this stuff, we're going to give you a test on it. If you know it and you get a certain percentage, yeah, lovely, you're going to pass. So you might as well do the same things that the school system does for your martial arts system, or like something similar, because that's how kids already operate. As for adults, funnily enough, I think, we can attest to this, but a few of the adults love using the tick sheets too. Now, we don't do the stripes, but they still come over and they're like, hey, did I tick this off tonight? Did I get this right? Can I get a tick ready for my grading? And it's like, it's cool to see that even as an adult, you like to get those short-term achievements. So bringing that back to you, Pat, you've trained with me now for, is it 3 or 4 years?
It's getting on 4 years, yeah.
It's probably getting on 4 years. What's your opinion on that then? Because you've done loads of different systems. How do you find that doing it the way that we do it now?
I will agree with what you said. I think it is very much a case of you get these sheets and you're like, you can be as stoic about it as you want, but there's definitely a part of you going like, I want my tick. I want to know that somebody has recognized that I can do this technique well. I do like it. I think there is definitely an element of, for me, and I know, and I've said this to you, so I know this isn't news to you, but for me, the black belt, I view it very clinically. I view it very coldly, because I think, it's a view to an end. If I get a black belt, that opens up the opportunity to get teaching licenses and support the club in different ways and grow in that sense. And I think I say that, I know for a fact I'm going to cry like a baby when I actually get it, because it will represent, in one way or another, the journey that I have taken as a martial artist since the age of 16. So in itself, I can speak about it very coldly and in a very business-like context, but I know for a fact that it is going to be a very emotional day when it happens. And I think it's one of those things where there was a time when it really wouldn't have motivated me. There was a time when I was just working out where it's kind of like, I don't really care about the grades. I don't really care if I'm a black belt, or if I get, the stripe on my arm or on my belt or anything like that, because I'm just here to kind of soak it all up. But I'm aware that that is not a very common view, and I do appreciate that. If somebody's going to go to the trouble of going to a martial art rather than just going to the gym to get fit or to be more confident or anything like that, you want those milestones. Yeah. So I completely agree. But yes, well,
awesome.
Thank you very much for talking with me, as always. Where can we find you to discuss our favorite cakes?
Well, in the cafe is a good place to find me. I'm not going to tell you which one, because I might just get loads of angry wrestlers throwing me on the floor. But so you can find me on Instagram under Cotswold Karate School. I'm also on the web I know, very exciting. We've got CotswoldKarateSchool.com as well, which is our website, which will tell you all about our seminars that we run, where we get special guests down, including people like Ian Abernethy, Jamie Clubb, and various other people. Like we've got Rokus Leo from Martial Arts Journey on YouTube coming over soon. And where can we find you, Pat?
If you want to talk to me about cake, martial arts, or anything else for that matter, I have nothing but time on my hands, trust me. You can find me on Instagram at Good Medicine Martial Artist. Very good. Thank you, everyone at home, for listening. Thank you, Jack, and we hope to see you next time.
Bye bye.